I would be very frank with you guys. This is the first time in my life where I have felt that the chair of the presidency is vacant. The feeling that I'm getting, the impression that I'm getting, is that the world is preparing for a Trump presidency. And I hope that Trump never gets convicted because I don't want a potential civil war. So the New York Times did this massive poll of American voters and also likely voters, and yes, the results are in, and it is everything that we expected. Donald Trump is dominating. Donald Trump is winning. He is taking the lead in the public opinion sphere, and he is beating Biden in the polls. But none of us are really surprised about this because what happened after the debate, the infamous debate, well, everyone was making fun of Biden after the debate. I mean, just look at Twitter, full of clips. There was so much content taken out of that debate. It is hilarious. So many people taking clips of Biden looking dumbfounded, looking defeated, having that sort of demeanor where he just goes, as Trump is talking, Biden is just going, he just looks defeated all the time. Or Biden looks like, he looks like the lights are on, but no one is home. He has that look. And there was just so much memeology. There was so much meme potential in this debate. So much material for memes and clips coming out of this debate. It was quite obvious, really, from the beginning, what was going to happen after that whole fiasco. And here we are. So the New York Times did this whole poll. They did this study asking potential voters and voters, likely voters, who they're going to vote for. And most people said that they are going to vote for Donald Trump. Most people said that they preferred Donald Trump. A lot of people said, really most people said, if you look at Democrats, if you look at Republicans, most people said that Biden is too old and is not fit to be the president. Because if Biden wins, he's going to be 86 by the end of his presidency. And a lot of people in America, sadly enough to say, don't really make it to that age. Most people don't make it to 86. So there's a whole lot of distrust over Biden being president again, right? There's a whole lot of mistrust over the potential of another Biden presidency. So I want to read to you guys some excerpts from this article that was published on the New York Times. So I got this new app. It's a highlighter, and I could just highlight the parts that I want to read to you guys. It's pretty helpful. So it says here right in the beginning of the article, Donald Trump's lead in the 2024 presidential race has widened after President Biden's fumbling debate performance last week, as concerns that Mr. Biden is too old to govern effectively rose to new heights among Democrats and independent voters, a new poll from the New York Times and Siena College showed. Mr. Trump now leads Mr. Biden 49 to 43% among likely voters nationally, a 3-point swing toward the Republican from just a week earlier before the debate. It is the largest, now I found this to be interesting, it is the largest lead Mr. Trump has recorded in a Times/Siena poll since 2015. Now let's go back. Let's go back, everyone, to 2015. There was some serious political energy in the years 2015, 2016, and 2017. Those 3 years, and you can even include 2014. But those 3 years, 2015, 2016, 2017, those 3 years were unmatched when it came to political energy in our lifetime. In our lifetime. I don't know how it was back in the day when Kennedy ran or whoever, George Washington. I'm pretty certain it was pretty crazy. But in our lifetime, in the lifetime of millennials and in the recent lifetime of boomers, there was nothing like those years, 2015, 16, and 17. Those years were just filled with political energy. The political energy that lingered in the air, and that window of time has been unmatched. I mean, since that time, I've never seen anything like it. And it was just immense. The political energy that just exploded in ideological hysteria. It was quite amazing. And there was so much energy for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump would say something and bam. And what happened was Twitter got rid of him and the energy really deflated in 2020 because of the whole pandemic. We went through the plague. So really the whole political energy that would have been there for Trump, it was deflated and it just went out like a whimper. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. But now we see this renewed energy. And this is the largest lead for Mr. Trump in a Time/Siena poll since 2015. So we're going back to 2015 energy, which is really, really refreshing because it's nice to wake up from the jejune time that we had in the last 4 or 5 years. Let's be honest here. You see a lot of minorities going crazy for Donald Trump. You see a lot of African Americans, Hispanics. You also see a lot of Middle Eastern Americans, Arab Americans have been quite enthusiastic for Donald Trump. We see this in Michigan, Minnesota. And I looked into a poll that was done amongst Middle Eastern Americans. And even amongst Arab Americans, Trump is leading against Biden. And a lot of that has to do with the war in Gaza. Because, and I've said this before, Biden is in this, he's in this predicament. And anyone who has gotten into the whole American political sphere knows what I'm talking about. Biden is in this predicament where you have on one side the pro-Israel lobby, which is very powerful and very wealthy, and which is really fronted by AIPAC and the ADL and other various hospitalist organizations. They are very powerful, very influential. Most people in Congress have an AIPAC agent/handler to give that particular politician the talking points in favor for Israel, what to say, what not to say, etc., etc. And the reason why this is because a lot of money comes from the pro-Israel lobby into the campaign funds for a lot of American politicians. And so Biden is in this difficult place. He's in between a rock and a hard place. He's in between the pro-Israel lobby and those who are critical of Israel. So if he is too pro-Israel, he's going to piss off the potential voters who are critical of Israel, Middle Eastern voters, Democrats who are sympathetic to the Palestinians. If he becomes too critical of Israel, he's going to gain the ire of AIPAC. that whole mechanism. So he's in a very difficult situation, but he has to toe the line. So he can't seriously face Israel, but at the same time, he can't be overly supportive of Israel. He has to be somewhere in the middle. And then you have Donald Trump, who has said, well, Israel's got to wrap things up, and Israel has to finish what it has to do and end the war and come to a ceasefire. This is what Trump has effectively said. This is what he has said, that Israel has to really come to a ceasefire. And it's very interesting to see what's happening right now in the political/geopolitical realm of the American empire. Very interesting to see what's happening. We have this carnage going on in Gaza, which has been going on for months and months now. And at the same time, we have this very large voting bloc in the United States that wants the war to be put to an end. And we have a president, Biden, who has been telling Israel to sort of calm things down. And Biden has said, Netanyahu, you can't attack Rafah. Remember Biden saying this? I remember Biden saying this. Don't attack Rafah. And what does Israel do? Israel attacks Rafah anyway. Israel doesn't give a damn about Biden. No country does. Let's be real here. Is this guy really even ruling the country? I would be very frank with you guys. This is the first time in my life where I have felt that the chair of the presidency is vacant. I just don't feel like we have a president. I've had this feeling, and I'm sure a lot of people have had this feeling. I've had this feeling since Biden's election. I just don't feel like we have really a president. I feel as if the chair is empty. You know how a lot of Catholics say, well, since Francis took the chair of Peter, I have felt or I believe that the chair of Peter has been vacant. I feel the same way about the presidency. I just don't feel like there's really anyone there. I mean, maybe Jill is running things. When you see Jill walking her husband down the steps after the debate, like a granddaughter walks grandpa down the steps after he has done his doctor's appointment, you just don't really feel like you have a president. That's how I feel. I'm not saying that there is no legitimate president. Obviously, there is an official president. I just don't feel that way. That's all I'm saying, YouTube. All right, calm down. But Israel doesn't care about Biden. Russia doesn't care about Biden. And after the debate, it's very interesting. Around the time of the debate, Zelensky comes along and he says, well, we're going to start to enter this phase of ending the war, coming to an end, right? Coming to a ceasefire. And now you have Netanyahu saying, well, this stage of the fighting in Gaza is going to start winding down. I wonder why that is. And remember what Biden said during the debate. He said, well, remember Trump said that Biden was basically incompetent in everything, and he was incompetent about the whole Israeli-Gaza crisis. And Netanyahu's, and Biden said, that's not true. Israel has agreed to my framework for a peace settlement. And then you actually look at the details of this, and what you find is that, yeah, Israel has said that they like what Biden has to say about a peace settlement, but they believe at the same time that Biden's framework is a bad plan. And I've said this before, the Israelis are toying with Biden. This is what I believe. They are toying with Biden. And now you see the opinion about Biden versus Trump, and what you see. You even see this amongst Democrats. You see a lot of disappointment, tons of disappointment for Biden. And you see this immense popularity for Donald Trump. And you see a lot of Democrats saying that Biden is not fit to be president again for a second term. And so the feeling that I'm getting, the impression that I'm getting, is that the world is preparing for a Trump presidency. Now, I could be completely wrong, but that's the impression that I'm getting. And the impression that I'm getting in regards to Israel and in regards to Ukraine is that the belligerents in these conflicts are waiting for a new president. They're waiting for a new presidency. Why is that? I don't know. They think that Biden is impotent. Who knows? But they're just saying, listen, America right now has erectile dysfunction, and it needs some Viagra. It's like that scene from Batman when Jack Nicholson is sitting on his chair. Jack Nicholson's Joker, which is arguably the best Joker. Arguably. That's debatable. But Jack Nicholson's Joker is sitting on a chair, and he says, this town needs an enema. Well, it seems to me that the world is saying America needs some Viagra. And they're waiting for a new president. This is the impression that I'm getting. And I think that if Trump wins, Trump is going to say, okay, Israel, it's time to wrap things up. You've killed enough kids already. Let's come to the negotiating table. And I think that Israel will be more inclined to acquiesce to a Trump administration. Why is this? I don't really know. It reminds me of what happened back in the 70s when you had the Tehran hostage crisis. That whole thing was just a giant play. It was just a big theater for the world to see, to think, oh, wow, look, Reagan is so tough and Carter is so weak. Because what happened during that whole hostage crisis? Well, here's the thing. Let's rewind a little bit here. You have the Shah of Iran, who the Americans were beginning to dislike because he was getting a little too close to the Soviets, something like that. And the Shah had cancer. He was close to death. So they said, let's send him to a hospital in New York City for medical service. Well, people within the United States government knew that if you put the Shah of Iran in a hospital in New York City, people back in Tehran are going to riot. And they knew that if you put the Shah in New York City, the mullahs in Iran will preach in their sermons that the Shah of Iran is in cahoots with the Americans, and they will say this is proven by the fact that the Shah is in a hospital in New York City. Now, when I read this, I thought to myself, are the Iranians that insane? And it turns out that they were. It turns out that they were that insane, yes. Because that's exactly what happened. And there's even a statement from Jimmy Carter in which Carter is saying, don't put the Shah in the hospital because if you do, there's going to be riots in Iran. And I'm pretty certain, if my memory serves me correctly, there was a warning within the White House, within the U.S. government, that if you put the Shah in the hospital, the embassy will be taken over. And that's what happened. So the Americans knew what they were doing. They knew the consequences of putting the Shah in the hospital. And they did it anyway. And so there were riots in Israel. There were that's coming soon, in the future. There were riots in Iran, and they took Americans as hostages. And it was a big, big travesty, right? It was a big disaster. It was a very big tragedy. Oh my God, these Americans are hostages. What do we do? Well, there was an election that was going on. It was Carter versus Reagan. Everyone knows this. Everyone has heard about this, right? And there were people who were close to Reagan who were in the CIA. You had George Bush Sr., and you had William Casey, the head of the CIA at that time. Well, during the hostage crisis, the CIA people who were close to Reagan, who were within Reagan's circle, they had a meeting with the Iranians. And there was this infamous meeting that took place in a hotel in Madrid. And there was William Casey, or Bill Casey, and there was an Israeli arms dealer. There were also two Iranian arms dealers who were involved in this whole conspiracy. And they basically said this: okay, the Americans told the Iranians, okay, Iran, keep the hostages as hostages. We know that Reagan is going to win, so keep the hostages. Once Reagan wins, immediately release the hostages so that Reagan will look strong. Toy with Carter, pretend that you're going to agree on releasing the hostages, and then rescind and pull back. Make Carter look weak. In exchange for all this, we are going to sell weapons to you. America and Israel are both going to sell weapons to the Iranians because the Iranians were in a war with Saddam Hussein, and America was making money on both sides. They were selling weapons to the Iraqis, selling weapons to the Iranians, and yet again, the Middle East was being toyed by a big Western power, which is always very sad for me to see. And the money that the Americans got from selling the weapons to both of the belligerents, the Iraqis and the Iranians, they used to back the Contras in Central America, and those guys were a bunch of monsters as well. So the American people watched as Carter was trying to make a deal with the Iranians, and they would watch as the Iranians would pull back and rescind, and they would watch as the Iranians would act as if they were about to agree to release the hostages and then pull back, and the world got this perception that Carter was a weakling. And then Reagan wins, and then bam, the hostages are released. And there is this massive perception all over America that Ronald Reagan was so strong, he just walked into a room, put his balls on the table, and the Iranians released the hostages in absolute terror of Ronald Reagan. And that is why to this day you have boomers romanticizing and mythologizing Ronald Reagan like he was some kind of a master. And that's the reality. But the whole thing was a perception. It was a perception that was it was artificialized. It was a perception that was created by the CIA, by people who were close to Ronald Reagan. And I think that this perception, this type of perception, is being utilized today. There was a famous saying, I think it was from Shakespeare, all politics is theater. Politics is theater. It's a play. So here you have Trump. He's being charged because he gave hush money to a stripper because he got a blowjob, and he was put into trial for this, for giving hush money, and he was found guilty on all felony counts. And there was this massive ecstasy, this massive hysteria that resounded throughout Twitter or X. There was this massive ripple effect. And you had righties saying nothing's going to happen. Or, sorry, they weren't exactly saying that. They were saying, oh my God, look at what they're going to do to our man Trump. And then you had all the lefties who were in tears. He's going to be put in prison. He going to be put in prison. And they were people who were that stupid. Now, could Trump be put into prison in the future? Maybe. But is Donald Trump going to be put into prison before the election? No. That's obvious. But there were all these libs, these lefties on Twitter, in tears. Oh, he's going to be put in prison. I can't believe it. He got charged. He got convicted on all charges. Well, what perception did that give? It gave the perception that Trump is a martyr, that Trump is being persecuted. And then amongst African American voters, it gave the perception that he's a gangster. And they were people, I kid you not, I heard this, there were people online saying, Donald Trump is one of us. He's one of us African Americans, because us African Americans, we get convicted of false charges all the time. Donald Trump is now a brother.
As much as people may have been abhorred by Donald Trump's statement weeks ago, talking about how black folks, he's hearing that black folks find him relatable because what he's going through is similar to what black Americans have gone through. He wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. When you see the law enforcement, the court system, and everything else being exercised against him, it is something that black folks throughout this nation can relate to.
Oh, yeah, there were people making this argument. Oh, yeah, best believe it. So it didn't really work for the libs, right? This whole idea that, that if we can just get him charged, then we can get him put in prison. It's only helping him. Now, what happened? What happened in the night after the conviction? Donald Trump is seen in the UFC fight. I was watching the UFC live that night. I was watching it. And I saw Donald Trump in the crowd. And I remember telling my dad, I said, this whole thing is theater. It's all a bunch of bullshit. It's a big play. That's all it is. And I remember Khabib walking up to Trump, and Khabib said, "You're going to end this thing in Gaza, right?" And Donald Trump said, "We're going to put an end to it. I'm going to put an end to it." Very endearing, I must say. Very inspirational, I must say. But this is the perception that a lot of people have, that maybe Trump could end the violence in Gaza. Trump is going to bring the gas prices down. Trump is going to bring inflation down, right? This is a big perception. And the New York Times article talks about this perception in regards to gas prices and inflation. But it's all just a big show. And then what happened recently? What happened just a couple of days ago? The Supreme Court says you can't prosecute Trump for things that he did in an official capacity, in the official capacity as being the president. You can't prosecute him. So now Trump, all he has to do when they try to nail him for, I don't know, subverting the election of 2020, or when they try to nail him on the Georgia case, his people are just going to say those were official actions. Whatever you're trying to get me for, whatever charges you're trying to lay on me, those were official actions. Those were official actions. The whole thing's a show. The mugshot, the infamous mugshot, I think people were making t-shirts out of it. The most infamous mugshot in history, in American history, the mugshot of Donald Trump. It's all theater. It's all play. It's all perception. And right when you read the details about the hostages for weapons conspiracy back in the era of Reagan, you will realize it's all a bunch of theater. It's like this whole thing with Netanyahu. Oh, is Netanyahu going to be put into prison? I don't think Netanyahu is going to be put into prison. And if they did put him in prison, a civil war would probably break out in Israel between the zealots and the moderates, and it'll be a return back to the temple war back after decades after the crucifixion of Christ. But the whole thing is theater. Now let's read more of this article here. It says here in the article, a majority of every demographic, geographic, and ideological group in the poll, including black voters and those who said they will still be voting for him, Biden, believe Biden is too old to be effective. So they went into every demographic, Hispanic, black, white, whatever, and across the spectrum of the human family, it was agreed that Biden is too old. The article goes on to say the overall 74% of voters view him as too old for the job, up 5 percentage points since the debate. The share of independent voters who said they felt that way rose to 79%, nearly matching the Republican view of the president. Who cares about? Like, independent voters, I guess, are important because they may tilt an election a certain way. The poll offers early empirical evidence of what many Democrats have feared, that Mr. Biden's faltering debate performance has further imperiled his chances against Mr. Trump this fall. And you have a lot of Democrats, big Democrats, saying, I don't think Biden is going to win. Some Democratic lawmakers and donors, the donors, that's where the money is at. That's the most important thing in the whole thing. The money, right? Soros, who is it? AIPAC? I don't know all the donors. Mr. Biden's faltering debate. Okay, so it says here, some Democratic lawmakers and donors are raising questions about Mr. Biden's fitness following his struggles. I got all these billions of dollars here, and I don't know, Mr. Biden, you look pretty old, but you make a great prop for a show. They are demanding that Mr. Biden prove for a skeptical public that he is capable of serving until he is 86. Skeptical public. What type of nonsense is this? We just saw the evidence. We just saw the demonstration. And it didn't work out for Biden. The debate was the demonstration of whether or not Biden is mentally capable. The results are in. Most people don't think so. Okay, hold on. I'm going to fast forward here. I'm just going to read the paragraphs or the sentences that I've highlighted. Half of voters go much further than thinking Mr. Biden is too old to be effective. A full 50% agree that his age is such a problem that he is not capable of handling the job of president, including 55% of independent voters. One of the more interesting findings in the poll was, you'll love this one. All the men's rights people will love this one. All the MGTOW people. One of the more interesting findings in the poll was that men accounted for virtually all of Mr. Trump's post-debate gains. So almost all of the people who got Trump above Biden in this poll after the debate were men. Mr. Trump has made appeals to machismo a centerpiece of his 2024 election, making his first public appearance after his felony conviction related to paying hush money to a porn star, a visit to UFC fight. I love this. It's so true. It's so true. So he gets convicted of 30 plus felony counts, right? Found guilty on all charges, blah, 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 big deal, right? Where does he go? The UFC, by far the most right-wing sport in all of sports in the United States. You want to find the sport where you have the most rightist in the crowd? It's the UFC, probably more so than NASCAR. I would say UFC and NASCAR, maybe they're the same, but the UFC is pretty right-wing as far as its fans go. Very right-wing, pro-Second Amendment, pro-military, pro-police, the whole thing. And that's the place that he went. That's where he went because he knew, wow, oh man, just imagine what's going on in people's heads. Oh man, this guy got a blowjob and now what? He's going to go on a trial and now he's in the UFC watching the fights with us. Man, he's one of us. And I'm actually, listen, I hope that Trump never gets put into prison. I do. I hope that Trump never gets put into prison. You know why? Because my fear is that if Trump gets put into prison, the Trump fanatics, you know what I'm talking about. The Trump fanatics will be so hysterical that they will break out into violence, and you'll have something worse than January 6th. You'll have something maybe even akin to a civil war. That is my biggest fear. So I really hope that Trump wins, so that way we have 4 years where the Trump fanatics are satisfied and they can shut up because they'll think our guy is up there, so we can just relax for 4 years. And I hope that Trump never gets convicted because I don't want a potential civil war. That's what I don't want. And I was thinking, when he was found guilty on all charges for the hush money thing, I was thinking to myself, are we going to have a civil war over a blowjob? I mean, is this how America is going to end? Is this going to be the end of America? Is it going to be the blowjob that was heard all over the world? That was my question. I was thinking about that because you know how they say, oh, it was the shot heard all over the world, right? They'll say this about the beginning of a particular war. It was the shot that was heard all over the world. It sparked all the carnage. I was thinking about this in regards to the Trump being found guilty on all felony charges. I was thinking, man, is this going to start a civil war? Will this be known in the future as the blowjob that was heard all throughout the earth? It resounded all over the world. It started all of the chaos, all of the gore, all of the blood. That's what I was fearing. But then the Supreme Court steps in and says he's actually immune for anything that he did in the capacity of being the president. I'm thinking, okay, there's hope. There's hope, everyone. So the article goes on to say, in the pre-debate poll, Mr. Trump had led among likely male voters by 12 percentage points. After the debate, his lead among men ballooned to 23 points. That movement was particularly concentrated among younger men and men without college degrees. And so there you go. It really goes to show you, amongst the younger dudes in America, you have a lot of conservatives, guys. You know how back in the day they were saying that atheists were going to dominate the country and people weren't going to be conservative. They were going to be liberal atheists. That's a bunch of nonsense. Mr. Biden's 5-point edge among likely women voters before the debate actually ticked up slightly to 8 points. So the ladies like Biden or what? I don't really believe that. I think a lot of women are going to vote for Trump because here is a metric that you can go by when it comes to these elections. Men vote for who they can picture themselves having a beer with. Women vote for who they can picture themselves sleeping with. The men say, "Can I have a beer with him?" And the women say, "Would I like getting banged by this guy?" I mean, that's the reality. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. If you know, you know. Just look at Bathsheba and King David. Those who said they had watched the CNN debate, which was held in Atlanta, said Mr. Trump outperformed Mr. Biden 60% to 22%. So the people who watched the debate, 60% of them said Trump obviously won. So we're all apparently seeing the same thing. Only 16% of voters said Mr. Biden did well, and a meager 3% said he did very well. So it's not looking good for Biden, guys. Around 80% of those who watched clips or heard about the debate but did not watch live thought Mr. Biden was too old. So a lot of people didn't watch the debate, but they just went onto Twitter and they watched the clips and they said, oh, okay, we know who won. And it's true, right? The Times/Siena survey before the debate had appeared more favorable to Mr. Trump than the national average of polls at the time, etc., etc., etc. Guys, I can read you more of this stuff, but it's all pretty much saying the same thing. Donald Trump is leading over Biden right now, and it's not looking good for the Democrats. And I can talk some more, but I don't want to make this video too long, but I just want to say this one last thing briefly as possible, and that is that the world right now is heading towards isolationism. and Trump is a reflection of this reality. Back in, I want to say 2021, some years ago, the CIA put out a report about basically what to expect for the 2030s. And what it said was that the world will not be a unipolar world. It's going to be broken down into various blocks of power. The Europeans will have their own block, the Turks will have their own block, Americans will have their own block, etc., etc. And so we can see what we're heading into. We are heading towards isolationism, and we're heading towards a multipolar world where the world is ruled by various blocks. You can even argue various empires. Trump is a reflection of this reality. So keep this in mind. Keep this in mind because it may just pave the way to a Trump victory. I could be wrong, but it may just pave the way towards that end. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.